Hello everyone and welcome back to Alternative Apex Formula Equal here for the 17th round of the 2025 season, where we ask the question, what would Formula 1 be like if the cars were equal? Now, we've had 16 races so far, which means we are at the two-third mark of the season as we approach here to Baku. If you did miss the last one out in Monza, I cannot recommend enough going back and watching. It was truly incredible. So if you did miss that, do go back and watch that one. But if you've seen it already, you know what happened. It was an incredible race. So let's have a look at how the drivers will be lining up for today's race. And hopefully we can see a race that's half as good as what we saw last time out in Italy. On the pole position, it is Lando Norris looking to try and keep his title hopes alive. And in second place, it is Charles Leclerc for Ferrari, still looking for his first win of the season. And behind them, in third place, it is Oscar Piastri, strong qualifying from the Australian, with Pierre Gasly in fourth place. Yuki Tsunoda fifth, ahead of George Russell in sixth place, and it is Esteban Ocon and Nico Hülkenberg making up the fourth row, with Max Verstappen a disappointing ninth place on the grid, just ahead of Fernando Alonso. Albon and Lawson the row behind them, just outside the top 10, with Bortoleto and Hamilton a disappointing 14th after his run of form. Then it is Oliver Behrman ahead of Carlos Sainz, Isaac Hadjar, Jack Doohan, Lance Stroll, Kimi Antonelli, and Franco Colapinto rounds out the back of the grid for today's Azerbaijan Grand Prix. As I said during that, Lando Norris on pole position needs to try and score big today, with the championship leaning more and more in favour of Max Verstappen. But of course, with Verstappen down in 9th on the grid and Lando Norris on pole position, there's a good chance here today that we could see Norris cut back into the championship lead that Verstappen has built up over the recent races. In the last race, we saw Norris knock 3 points off of it, so perhaps we could see something even bigger today. If we want to see this title go all the way, we may need that to start happening sooner rather than later. But of course, we have seen this season that anything can happen, and usually it does happen. So who knows what we could expect to see here. Maybe Verstappen can put in an incredible drive to go 9th to 1st, or maybe Lando Norris will dominate like we've seen Verstappen do on previous occasions and put this title fight back right neck and neck. Who knows what will happen around these city streets, so do make sure to stick around and find out. The 5 red lights are on. And we are racing here in Azerbaijan, and it's a strong start from pole position, but it's a better start from Charles Leclerc, who's going to get down the inside of turn number 1. He keeps his Ferrari alongside the McLaren as they head out of turn 1 towards turn 2 they go. It's side by side for the lead of the Grand Prix. Leclerc on the inside, Norris trying to hold it out around the outside. The field cleanly through the first couple of corners, and Charles Leclerc is going to be trying to take the lead. He's got the run, and he's got the lead as they head down towards turn 3. Can Lando Norris fight back on the brakes? No, it's Charles Leclerc that's going to lead the two McLarens. And the front of the field is there behind them. That's Tsunoda up into 4th place. Russell side by side with Pierre Gasly here, and ahead now of the Frenchman as they head through the first sector of the lap for the first time now, and towards the old city streets that line this circuit. Battling throughout the field here, that's Albon side by side with Lawson as Verstappen has got up into 9th place, well, maintained 9th place I should say, off the start there, so it could have been worse for him off the line, but it could have been a lot better too, as they're still side by side here. Albon racing with Fernando Alonso, coming through and towards the castle section they go. Still side by side action here, but they all know they have to get single file out, and they do indeed before they get to the incredibly narrow part of this racetrack, which all of them appear to have navigated cleanly, with Charles Leclerc up at the front for now, as now we look into the middle of the pack. That's Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, the two Frenchmen going side by side again here. These two have seen a lot of each other this season, and they're going to be seeing even more here as they race down into turn number 1 on lap 2 of 13. It is these two former teammates doing battle, and it is Ocon that will take the position for now, at least ahead of his former rival. And we see battling throughout the field again. You can see there Alonso and Albon getting into it here. Albon losing the position this time around. Lewis Hamilton's looking to get involved as well here. There's more battling further up the field as that's Gasly coming right back down the inside of Esteban Ocon is behind them. Indeed, the battle does go back in favour of Alexander Albon, as Lewis Hamilton's going to get past Alonso as well here, or is he? Alonso fighting back around the outside, and he does retain that position at least here at the moment, but Albon fighting back up the field as there was some yellow flag flashing there, as perhaps we've got someone going slowly, and it's Nico Hülkenberg. Nico Hülkenberg, Sauber, is off to the side of the road and crawling its way down this part of the racetrack. That is a disappointing situation for the Sauber driver found himself in after having some really strong races of late. The Sauber team not going to be scoring big here today. Sadly, as we look back towards the front of the field, Tsunoda has got Piastri in his sight, but Russell in his mirrors as they head towards turn 1 once more. They're going to be side by side onto the brakes. Piastri will be a little bit thankful that these two stay side by side as long as possible here. As they make their way towards turn 2, Russell on the outside of Tsunoda still, absolutely wheel-to-wheel Tsunoda on the mediums, Russell on the hards there, so perhaps Russell slightly less confidence in the tyre wear in his Mercedes, but perhaps just with the raw speed to make that position anyways. Meanwhile, Verstappen is up into 7th position in this one, and he is making progress so far in this race, albeit slowly, 1 position per lap pretty much so far. As now we see at the end of lap 3, Tsunoda's going to go defensive on Russell this time. Tsunoda's lost a little bit of time to the McLaren ahead of him. Russell's going to try and go all the way around the outside again, identical to what he had to do last time, and he wasn't able to get it last time. This time he is, though. That is George Russell up into 4th position in this race. And now he can set his sights on those podium positions just up the road ahead of him. But Tsunoda now is going to immediately try and fight back here with the power of the DRS. He's going to pull alongside as they head towards turn 3. And Tsunoda's going to retake that position from George Russell. That is a nightmare situation for the Mercedes driver, who just cannot get clear of this Red Bull. And if he can't do it quickly, he could end up getting stuck here for quite a while indeed. As now we look to the back end of the points. That's Pierre Gasly, who's considering to fall back through the order here. Alexander Albon side by side with the Frenchman through here now, trying to make the move happen. Is he able to do it? Not quite able to. Pierre Gasly holds on to that place. Is overtaking, whilst you think it'd be quite easy around here with the incredibly long flat out section of the racetrack. Some of these drivers finding a little bit of trouble making the moves at the moment at least. As for now, you see them having to wait for this second DRS zone. Can this be an opportunity? Actually, it's an opportunity for Max Verstappen, as he's going around the outside of Esteban Ocon, and he gets up into 6th place now. So that's another position gained for the championship leader, up into the top 6. But really still losing quite a few points to his main rival in this race. Another driver there on the hard compound tyres, as once more George Russell finds himself in the slipstream with the DRS on the back of Yuki Tsunoda, who is doing a great defensive drive here because he's pushing George Russell back into Tsunoda's teammate there as they're side by side through turn number 1. And Russell, will he get it done this time? Last time he managed to get clear at this point, but then got repassed into the turn 3 braking zone. So let's see, as this time they're going to stay side by side through here. Verstappen watching on behind thinking, could you just please get out of the way? I've got a championship to try and fight for here. And he's going to go to the inside of not just one, but both of them. No! Tsunoda very aggressive on his teammate there. And that could well open the door for George Russell to make that pass finally on the Red Bull driver. With the inside line now, he's got a little bit of an advantage, but Tsunoda's keeping his nose in around the outside. Can he keep himself side by side? And now they continue through the next middle sector of the lap. These two drivers still side by side, and look at the queue building behind them, continuing to grow here, as these two drivers are costing each other so much time here, but they are just not willing to give it up here. As now side by side as they head towards the castle, Russell finally gets ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, but for now, that position looked like it was perhaps more trouble than it was worth. Now, as that's Verstappen with a big moment on the straight there. Scary for him, pulling out the slipstream with DRS side by side with his teammate now, trying to do what George Russell did just a lap ago, as Esteban Ocon behind, watching on, trying to make a similar pass here, as the two Red Bulls side by side. Of course, Red Bull will be probably watching this one with their looking through their fingers here, because they have a poor history, I think it's fair to say, of recent problems in Baku, let's say, as the two Red Bulls especially side by side here, with Ocon making it free wide, and there's contact, and Ocon has a half spin there, just about keeps control of his car. Brief yellow flags there, but Verstappen does get the pass done on Tsunoda, and Red Bull will indeed have been nervous watching that particular battle. Free wide into turn 3 rarely ends well. As we look back towards the front on lap 7 of 13, that is the top 2 coming down pit lane. It's Charles Leclerc still leading this race by a decent margin over Lando Norris, but Norris keeping in his shadow for now, not dropping too far back just yet, as George Russell, Oscar Piastri will stay out, as will Max Verstappen here. The bold strategy call from Red Bull. They leave him at risk of getting undercut by his teammate again in this one. But I have to imagine that the Red Bull team are hoping that Verstappen's pace here on his in-lap will be enough to keep him ahead of his teammate as side-by-side racing here, Lawson and Albon through the first turn, and that's going to be tricky for Charles Leclerc, who's going to come out right behind them. Thankfully for him, Lando Norris also in this train of cars as well. Charles Leclerc, though, right in this mix, and will not be liking this situation he's found himself in. He goes to the right of Albon. Albon nearly squeezes him into the wall there. Leclerc has to back out of that one. That was oh so nearly another bit of misfortune for the man yet to win this season. Charles Leclerc on the back of this battle and getting held up. Thankfully, Norris, as I said, in the same boat, also in this train of cars, but Piastri, Russell, maybe even Verstappen can gain a little bit of time here on these drivers whilst they're stuck in this pack of cars in the mid-pack, as Piastri now does make his way down pit lane at the end of lap number 9. Into his pit box he goes. Russell, Verstappen, and Gasly will be following him in here, as now he's going to get held a little bit on the pit exit. That's not what he would have wanted to see, that could well be costly here as we look to the front. Charles Leclerc does maintain the lead of this race after the pit cycle, ahead of Gabriel Bortoleto, who is yet to pit in this one. Lando Norris in third for now, of course, that'll be net second. Piastri now comes out of the pit lane and will come out just ahead, perhaps behind Oliver Bowman, just ahead, thankfully for him. So clear air for the McLaren driver. George Russell will come out ahead of the Rebels. And Tsunoda does jump Verstappen there in that pit cycle. That is what Rebel would have been worrying about, and that is indeed what happened there. So Russell now finds himself on the back of Oliver Bowman, who presumably will be pitting this lap, as will Gabriel Bortoleto. And as they head down the main straight now, we can see it is George Russell ahead of Tsunoda and Verstappen. But Verstappen still looking like the quicker of this group of cars, but he's still got the passes to make, as after making all the passes in the first stint, he has to do it all again now. Ocon currently sitting back in ninth, Bortoleto dropping out of the points now, as we see that side-by-side Hamilton, who is having a miserable day down outside of the points-paying positions over a pit stop behind his teammate on time. And now 13th place is his, but well, you don't get any points for that position, as now we see the two Rebels are doing battle once more with just 3 laps left in this one. It is Verstappen looking down the inside of his teammate down towards turn number 1. Max Verstappen gets the pass done there on Tsunoda once again in this race. Next up, it'll be George Russell that'll be trying to pass, as Piastri, whilst you can still just about see him up the road with only a few laps left in this one, it's going to be tricky for him to gain all that time. Now, as Sainz is on the back of Esteban Ocon as they head towards turn number 3, and Sainz around the outside. Both of these drivers on soft compound tyres. It's been a good drive so far from the Williams driver to make his way up into the top 10, trying to get another one here, as Ocon's going to hold it on around the outside in his Haas car. Good battling here from these two drivers, both just trying to get whatever they can from this race, with points on offer for their positions as things stand, as Max Verstappen, meanwhile, is looking at the back of George Russell's Mercedes as they head towards turn 1, and it is the beginning of the final lap. This is a crucial moment for Max Verstappen. He's going to get oh so close to contact through turn number 1, and it's Russell versus Verstappen. These two are doing battle, and what could possibly go wrong? Verstappen gets the move done in turn 1, but Russell is going to have the chance to fight back now with the DRS. We saw Tsunoda do a similar thing earlier in this race, where you just use the DRS back down towards turn 3 to make the pass happen, but as they head onto the brakes, it's Verstappen who has the advantage, and Max Verstappen will hold on to that 4 for now at least. As we look back towards the front of the field, that is Charles Leclerc making his way through the final proper challenging corner here, as he's going to be foot to the floor until the checkered flag now. It's been an incredible drive, and it's hard to believe that this drive has come from someone that has yet to get a race win this season. Charles Leclerc, as he heads on the long drag to the line, Charles Leclerc and Ferrari, for the first time, are going to stand on the top step of the podium in 2025. Leclerc wins the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Lando Norris takes second, a good points day for the McLaren driver. It's a double podium for the McLaren team, as Piastri comes home in third, with Max Verstappen holding on to 4th in the end there. Incredible for Ferrari, and of course for Charles Leclerc. He has had such a roller coaster of a season. Really disappointing start to the season, then sort of ramp things up, trying to get in some consistent results, came oh so close to a couple of victories, made himself back into the fight for third in the championship, but then sort of it had a bit of a wobble, had a few issues, and dropped back down again, looked like he was out of the fight. Hamilton was clearly the lead Ferrari driver for quite a while, but now here today in Azerbaijan, Leclerc has been incredible, quite frankly. An awesome drive from the Monegasque, and really showing what he is capable of doing this season. When things go well for him, they can go really, really well. Lando Norris in second there, 18 points for his championship. It is more points in his favour over Max Verstappen, but that gap is still quite a sizable one, so we are still looking at Verstappen in charge of this championship for now at least. But McLaren with a double podium, keep an eye on them in the Constructors' Championship. That could be a really good day for them. Of course, Hamilton, disappointing for him, finishing outside the points. So Ferrari, with only one car in the points, whilst they take home the victory, it's probably not going to be much good for them in the Constructors' Championship, at the moment at least, but at least it's something to take away from this weekend. And finally, Charles Leclerc can call himself a winner in 2025. Here we have the official results then for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and it is Charles Leclerc with the victory and fastest lap as well there, beating Lando Norris by 2 seconds. Oscar Piastri completing the podium there. Max Verstappen with a charge up from 9th on the grid to 4th. You have to feel he could have perhaps been in the fight for the podium at the end of that one if it weren't for some interesting strategy calls and just the traffic in general in his way. But that's what you have to pay the price for when you have a poor qualifying effort. You have to deal with that in the race. George Russell in 5th place there. Yuki Tsunoda in 6th. Pierre Gasly in 7th place, with Esteban Ocon in in 8th place. 9th place going to Carlos Sainz and Liam Lawson taking the final point from that race. Fernando Alonso just missing out for Aston Martin as his hopes of the top 5 in the championship are beginning to slip away just a little bit. Speaking of the Drivers' Championship, the gap now between the top 2 is 42 points, which is still under 2 Grand Prix worth, so as things stand, we'll be getting it pretty close to the end of the season, but of course Norris is the man now. For the first time in a while, we can say Norris is the man in form, so can he build on this to try and take the fight back to Verstappen in this one? It's still a big gap, but who knows what can happen behind them. The fight for third, Hamilton with a 20-point advantage over George Russell and a 21-point advantage over Charles Leclerc, who with that win gets himself somewhat back in the fight for the top 3 in the championship. Fernando Alonso just drifting a little bit in no man's land at the moment with a 32-point gap ahead and a 28-point gap behind him, just ahead there of Pierre Gasly and Oscar Piastri. Tsunoda, Sainz and Lawson there in 11th with Ocon and Albon behind. In the Teams Championship, Red Bull still have a pretty sizable lead, 33 points, but that's still not enough to have an entire Grand Prix worth of an advantage over their nearest rivals, McLaren. Ferrari sitting in 3rd there. They still are the only team this season to have a 1-2 finish. Of course, it was all the way back in Bahrain quite a while ago now, but still they are the only team to have managed that this season. Red Bull and McLaren, though, have just seemed a little bit more consistent with both cars, and that clearly is shown here in the points. But McLaren with a double podium here today, perhaps Piastri getting a little bit more in the mix can give the McLaren team the chance to reel in back to Red Bull in the Teams Championship and make it a bit more of a fight. So it's still very much all to play for in both championships as we leave the Azerbaijani capital in Baku. Next up, we'll be going to Singapore for the Singapore Grand Prix. The Marina Bay Street Circuit should be good fun there, with the possibility for more action. And with it being a street circuit, could we see another bit of a mixed-up finishing order with some drivers getting the mix that perhaps usually wouldn't do so? So we'll have to wait and see. Strategy also could be another factor when we go to a track like Singapore with such a long delta time in the pit lane and with such an advantage with fresher, softer tyres. Who knows what may well be possible when we go to that circuit. But that's it for this one here in Azerbaijan. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, goodbye.